These numbers are completely derisory relative to the scale of the problem. And this is Starmer massively on the back foot. You know, his party is currently literally behind Reform in the polls, despite his enormous majority in the House of Commons. He's panicking, and they've rustled up this pathetic stunt. Well, taxpayers are not going to be deceived by this, are they?
This is a really simple rule, and you and I can disagree with it. In fact, I do disagree with it.
Sure.
But here is the rule. You can only be exempt for capital gains tax on the sale of your primary residence. And it is a classic dodge to pretend that, in fact, the other property that you're selling is your primary residence and your partner lives in that, and actually you're living parallel lives. It is a load of nonsense. It's quite obvious that she has tried to dodge here. And
Keir Starmer once told a crowd he had a plan, which should have been the first warning sign, if he truly has one. It's likely laminated, colour-coded, approved by a committee of 6 mysterious advisors, and accompanied by at least one pre-scheduled apology. Standing beside him is Angela Rayner, a presence as pointless as an unnecessary subplot in a poorly written soap, loud, hollow, and utterly bewildering, like shouting into an empty tin shed.
Taxpayers are entitled to be absolutely bloody furious that once again their intelligence is being insulted and their hard-earned cash is being squandered arranging exclusive private jet travel for Albanians who, you know, let's be frank,
Have broken the law. Have broken the law.
They've broken the law, and what are they getting? 4 seats each or something on the private jet. What an absolute joke, and what a disgrace this government is.
And I think she's in real difficulty.
But this is not the kind of
and
thing
it is
that
such
should
a trivial amount of money. And I wouldn't mind so much if it weren't for the fact that Labour is so profligate with our money and proposes ever higher taxes, yet doesn't want to pay them.
Keir Starmer once told a crowd he had a plan, which should have been the first warning. If he really does, it's probably laminated, colour-coded, approved by a committee of 6 unknown advisors, and accompanied by at least one pre-scheduled apology. Beside him stands Angela Rayner, like an unnecessary subplot in a poorly written soap, loud, hollow, and utterly confusing, as if shouting into an empty tin shed.
The purpose of this government is to make our public services and our economy work for working people, strengthen our country in a world that increasingly preys on weakness. It's a cause that demands nothing less than the full power of government. Yet that's precisely what's broken.
Then, Isabel Oakeshott entered the conversation, slicing through the chaos like a literary chainsaw soaked in sarcasm. And suddenly the entire Labour fantasy crumbled, as if Starmer's latest manifesto had been carelessly left too close to a radiator.
This because we're the ones that have to face the consequences of having all these people in the country, in our country, who should not be here, and they're using it as some kind of hotel, despite the fact that many of these people that we're talking about here in these court cases actually have serious criminal records.
Yes. Then Isabel Oakeshott entered the conversation, cutting through the noise like a literary chainsaw soaked in sarcasm. And suddenly the entire Labour fantasy collapsed, as if Starmer's latest manifesto had been left too close to a radiator.
Right, all done that. Hope it goes away. Or you can strip it out, rip out the plaster, and deal with the problem once and...
Keir Starmer is the sort of man who could watch a building collapse and still need 6 focus groups to determine if it was tragic. His political instincts so cautious that he expends more energy avoiding fences than accomplishing anything. Angela Rayner, meanwhile, comes across like someone tried to bottle working-class authenticity, ran it through a spin cycle, and then had it recited by a glitching Alexa.
There's going to be political hell to pay for this deal that's being done today, this very, very dirty deal. Starmer has long been desperate to reverse Brexit, and now he's in a position where he's doing it in stages. This is a big set of concessions that he's making today. And actually, far be it from me to praise the Tories, but I think James cleverly had it right when he tweeted this morning that Starmer has got diplomacy.
Isabel Oakeshott didn't just criticise them, she tore them apart like a rogue GC biology project. Needing no sensational quotes or theatrics, logic, a hint of contempt, and a sharp side-eye were enough to slice through Starmer's famously vague policies like a scalpel through wet paper.
Unless we fundamentally reform the way government goes about its business, unless we first change how we try to change the country, then the hairdryer is all we've got. And this is a big job. Prisons overflowing, the NHS on its knees, a £22 billion black hole in our public finances, which, to put that in context, is nearly half of what we spend on defence.
Let's examine Starmer's version of leadership, which appears to involve performing political taxidermy on every idea that once had life. He's transformed Labour, a party that once had energy, into a TED Talk delivered by an exhausted HR manager. Starmer promises change like an unreliable builder, every tool at hand, no real plan, and an emotional range about as expressive as a self-checkout machine reminding you to remove your bagged items. Meanwhile, Rayner struts into debates as if she's starring in an endless episode of EastEnders, seemingly believing that yelling "I'm one of you" loudly enough will make people overlook the contradictions she tosses around like confetti, assuming that being loud somehow equals being right, a tactic. That might fool a 6-year-old audience, but not the electorate.
Is that you try to develop good relationships with other countries to further your own interests. You don't sacrifice your interests in order to develop better relationships with other countries. And, you know, Starmer, what bit of this doesn't he understand? The British public are absolutely fed up of the state of immigration. They are fed up with mass uncontrolled immigration. Starmer can shout as much as he wants about smashing the vile people smuggling gangs. He's smashed precisely 0 gangs.
Isabel, of course, wasn't having any of it. She treated Starmer's fake sense of integrity like a cheap knockoff handbag, looking decent from afar. But up close, the stitching was off, it smelled wrong, and was probably held together with the tears of betrayed trade unions. She exposed what everyone had suspected. Starmer shifts his positions more often than a mattress in a budget hotel, backing Corbyn until it became awkward, embracing Brexit when convenient, courting centrists, flirting with the left, and now chasing whoever tops the polls that week. Meanwhile, Rayner was no match for Isabel's precision. Behind her performative outrage, she seems to believe that shouting about injustice equals fixing it. That dropping enough G's and reminding people she once worked in a care home will mask policies full of holes. Isabel Oakeshott doesn't just attack with passion, she operates with cold precision. Like a surgeon bored of playing operation, making it clear that Starmer is less a leader and more a screensaver, occasionally flickering into relevance while mostly floating around doing nothing, his big vision for. Britain reduced to slightly less embarrassment sprinkled with inspirational cliques.
It isn't because the man is stupid, it's because, and this is a theme I keep returning to, he lacks judgment. And that is so important for somebody at the top of politics. If you don't have the right judgment, you're not going to last long. So you ask the question, how does he get this off the front pages? Here's what I'm going to say about that. This is not going to go away until he reveals...
Rayner, on the other hand, took the kind of figurative slap that makes you question your life choices. Isabel exposed her as someone whose confidence is inversely proportional to her grasp of policy, which is impressive in a way, the sheer volume of words Rayner can produce without actually saying anything meaningful. Watching her speak is like enduring a TEDx talk delivered by someone who only skimmed the headlines. And then there are Starmer's famous U-turns, the nationalisation pledge, held for all of 5 seconds before quietly shelving it when inconvenient student debt, cancelled the fees, and championed students until a spreadsheet appeared, then ghosted Gen Z like a bad Tinder date. When Starmer promised to restore trust in politics, you could almost hear irony choking in the background. This is the man who pledged unity only to deliver a party split wider than Rayner's northern vowel sounds. Isabel didn't exaggerate, she simply pointed, smirked, and let their contradictions topple like dominoes. And then there's the economy. Starmer talks about fiscal responsibility as if it were a new religion, parading Rachel Reeves around like a political talisman to shield Labour from a spendthrift reputation. Yet Reeves' approach boils down to cutting spending, smiling awkwardly and hoping no one notices. The entire plan rests on vibes and recycled conservative slogans.
Exactly what his secret is, but he sure as hell has got one or more secrets, and they relate in some way to Lord Ali and to his family. Now, I don't know how those two things overlap, but there is a secret there. There are papers all over this. They are waiting for their moment. There are people other than newspapers.
And as for Rayner's ideas, if Starmer's policies are beige wallpaper, hers are a fireworks factory run by toddlers. Free stuff for everyone, paid for with pure optimism. Maybe a progressive tax system imported from Narnia. Isabel mocked it all effortlessly, repeating what Rayner herself had advocated before pretending she never said it. One of Isabel's sharpest critiques likened Starmer's leadership to a malfunctioning sat-nav, always recalculating, never quite sure where he's going, constantly promising shortcuts, only to lead the country into a cul-de-sac of confusion, with Rayner riding shotgun, clutching a copy of The Guardian, and utterly clueless about maps. Together, they resemble Starmer as the sensible dad navigating a family holiday while pretending not to hate everyone in the car, and Rayner as the overexcited cousin on 3 Red Bulls, insisting everyone listen. They are not a dynamic duo, they're a walking sitcom without a laugh track. Isabel didn't just dismantle their policies, she questioned their political core, implying that Starmer's career is performance art titled Avoiding Commitment, while Rayner stands as a cautionary tale of what happens when charisma is mistaken for competence.
Well, when you were reading out the list of lefties that are going nuts about this, I was actually thinking Downing Street would be really happy at the spectacle of lefties going nuts, because it suggests that they're what they've announced is credible and believable and is genuinely, at least right of centre and a little bit Farage. It is none of the above. The lefties have no need to go nuts, because none of this is going to actually make a material.
Then Isabel landed a knockout punch, exposing the contradiction between Starmer's law and order obsession and his history as a former director of public prosecutions, all while his divided party floundered like a toddler's pizza. Starmer pretends problems don't exist. Rayner tries to be the voice of the people, but mostly just shouts half-remembered slogans. She calls herself a warrior, though her battles consist of aggressive expressions and expecting others to explain her policies. Isabel made it clear, the Starmer-Rayner duo is a political blind date gone wrong. One cautious and polite, the other reckless and loud, mismatched energy, mismatched ideology, and zero chemistry.